I'm April.
And I'm Caroline.
And this
is your Bloody Happy Hour.
Caroline, are you ready for this?
This is your newest guilty pleasure.
It's the bloodiest part of your week.
Did we say something about it also being happy hour?
Show did.
Because we're about to be sipping on some murder. Bloody Happy Hour.
Hey y'all, this is April.
Hey, it's Caroline.
And we have a quick Q&A for you.
Get ready.
Get ready. We have somebody famous on the line. You heard his name a couple times during these last couple of episodes. We have the famous Mr. Russ Hunt. Mr. Hunt, introduce yourself and tell them what your life is like today. What do you do today?
Okay, I am Russ Hunt Sr., not to be confused with Russ Hunt Jr., who is my son.
Okay.
Both of us are criminal defense lawyers. Both of us are capital attorneys, which means that we have both been licensed and certified by the state to say, yes, they can be appointed in capital murder cases. That's murder cases where the state is seeking the death penalty.
Oh, my goodness. Do you need somebody to shred your paperwork? Do you need a secretary?
Are you trying to get a job,
juicy.
April?
That sounds exciting. Okay, and does your son work with you?
No. Yes
Okay.
and no.
Okay.
He has his own practice. He has an office in Georgetown. He primarily practices in Williamson and Travis counties. But when they ask for court appointment attorneys to volunteer, then he and I will volunteer to go together as a team. So you can't have two lawyers in the same office be together, but you can have lawyers in different offices, and we don't have any kind of a business connection except we seem to practice really well together. So we enjoy trying cases together, and that's what we do. And right now, I think we've got 6 or 7 capital murder cases that are in various stages of getting ready for trial.
Oh, my goodness.
April's going to try to get on the jury of every one of those.
Yes.
That'd be great.
Now, I think I'm the only person in the world that just wants to volunteer to be on a jury. Okay, so you should be really proud of your son. That's really exciting.
I am.
That is good. That is so good. Okay, tell us about Russ Hunt. How many years ago was this? 40 years ago? 38 years ago? Tell us what your job title was then.
I was lead counsel in the David Wayne Spence case, but my actual job title was I was working for a primarily civil law firm, Fulbright, Winterford, Bice, and Marable, which was at that time was primarily an insurance practice, an insurance defense firm. But I did all of the appointments that were given to the firm. So the firm was appointed. I was lead chair, and Hayes Fuller was my second chair.
Yes. Okay. I remember that name. What's Hayes Fuller doing now?
I don't know if he's still practicing. I think he is with Naaman Hunt.
Okay. And so how did you become the lucky lawyer David Wayne Spence case?
Well, I had tried a number of cases in George Allen's court. Judge Allen was the presiding judge of the 54th District Court, and he and I had known each other for, at that time, probably 6 years, and I had practiced in front of him when he was on the county court bench and then when he was on the district court bench. And I think that he thought, well, here's somebody that can handle this case, and he isn't afraid of it, so I'll appoint him.
Oh, okay. I'm glad you brought up his name, so I got a question with him here in a little bit. Okay, so we're going to warn everybody that this was 40 years ago, and so his memory may not be what it was 40 years ago, but we're going to try to jog his memory a little bit. Did you refresh yourself on the case?
Yes, I talked to you.
Okay, and that's it.
That's it.
Okay, so my first question is, when you guys wrote that 33-page letter to the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office, right? And you were kind of warning them that an innocent man may get the death penalty.
Yes.
Where did that go? I mean, he obviously went to trial and he obviously got put to death, but did you ever hear back from the attorney's office? How does that usually work?
Well, we did that Now, I think this is right. I think we sent that before we ever tried Spence, because what we were trying to do is to get the federal government involved, because we thought, quite frankly, that it was a shitty investigation.
Right.
And so maybe if the FBI gets involved, then maybe they'll do a decent investigation and discover that we're right, because Hayes and I were convinced that David Wayne Spence had not done the crime.
Okay. Yeah, that's what it said, is that y'all tried to say this is a bogus trial and that the evidence wasn't good evidence and it was all hearsay. And then when Judge Allen, he might have set you up for failure. When Judge Allen kind of knocked that, and then y'all wrote the letter. So good, your memory was right. Caroline, what's your question?
So what was your experience meeting with and speaking with David Wayne Spence?
I'm sorry, what was my experience?
When meeting with and speaking with David Wayne Spence?
Oh, I remember the first time that Hayes and I went over to see him, and all we knew was what we had read in the newspaper. And so we figured we're going to be dealing with some kind of a bloodthirsty killer who was probably going to try to hurt us. So we came up with a game plan of what we would do if that was the case, and how we were going to make sure that the state didn't have to try him because he'd be dead.
So what was that game plan? Like, how do you even plan for that?
Oh, I'm not going to give away our secret.
It's 2 against 1.
We figured out
just how you can take him on if he was bloodthirsty. But was he bloodthirsty?
We were going to take him out.
Okay.
Hey, it's what you got to do.
So when you got in that room there with him, what was his demeanor?
Well, initially, he did not trust us at all, because he didn't have any reason to trust anybody that worked for the state. And the more we got to know him, and quite frankly, the better we got to like him, it was our opinion that he might be guilty of some things that people would frown on, but he basically was somebody that didn't do the crime, and he was charged with a capital murder case that we believed he wasn't guilty of.
Okay. I have a friend of the family that was a jailer at that time as well, and he was a jailer, and so he had Kenneth McDuff come through, and then he had David Wayne Spence, and he was like, Kenneth McDuff, you felt the evil. He was evil, he looked evil, he acted evil. He was evil and he was violent. But David Wayne Spence, you did not get that feeling from him, and then he didn't even show that when he was talking to others. So I've heard that a couple of times, actually.
Well, you could hear just the opposite of that, too, because there were killers that I talked to that said, oh, man, you could see the devil in his eyes. I mean, it was like talking to the devil himself. But we talked to an eye doctor who told us that David has a condition where his eyes reflected the light somehow, that sometimes it actually looked like his eyes were transparent. And that scared the shit out of some people.
Uh-huh. Wow.
I hope your broadcast isn't going to be on Baylor, because they might frown on me saying, like, words that I've used. Shame on me.
Oh, we've said worse.
Oh, yeah, we've said worse. So this is probably not a G-rated crowd that's going to be listening. Okay. So what was my next question? Okay, so Judge Allen.
And you said you're going to talk to him later?
No. I was going to bring him up later.
Oh,
so
okay. Well,
do you feel...
Talk to him, you give him my best, because he is a fine man.
Okay, and is he still around Waco?
Yeah, I haven't seen him for a couple months, but he's been around Waco.
Oh, I might try to hit him up. Okay, so there was a part in the book where you guys tried to introduce some new names. James Bishop, I think it was James Bishop. He was the guy that was a Waco native, but then right after the murders moved to California and committed some similar crimes there against rape against women, and then a guy named Ronnie Britton that he was fishing and had blood on him that night at the lake. He was seen at Lake Waco with blood. So when you brought in those names, and Judge Allen shut that down. What was your opinion on that at the time? And then maybe like now, do you think that he wanted a conviction and kind of closed the case because it had been going and going and going? Or do you think there wasn't really enough evidence to bring their name to the table at the time?
I think what I thought at the time is different than what I think now. What I think now, Judge Allen was trying his very best to try a clean trial and didn't want to get in some stuff that shouldn't legally come before a jury. So he was just trying to be careful.
Okay. Got it. And it blew up anyways. Okay, Caroline.
You ask that one. I don't know.
Go to the next one.
So, okay, yeah. Speaking of, if the case was tried today, do you think they would have been convicted?
No, I don't.
Yeah.
Remember, one of the things, maybe the biggest thing that the jury saw was the forensic odontologist who said that, not any question, you could tell it was David Spence's teeth marks in one of the girls. That guy has since been sort of defrocked, and forensic odontologist on odontology as a science has been debunked to the place where it's not permitted to come into court anymore because it's so full of shit.
Yeah. I was wondering because I watch a lot of court TV, but I've never heard of that.
Come up. And so you think about like Ted Bundy, like that was there's one of their smoking guns for convicting him. So if that isn't science, I wonder how many people, or like if it wasn't even science then, it wasn't allowed then, I wonder how many people would not be in jail or criminals or executed because of that.
It probably was admissible then.
Yeah.
It is more, but that's because they've done a lot of cleaning up of the forensic evidence rules and procedures. But I don't believe that any of that would come in now. Was tried now.
Wow, that sucks. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to the James Bishop guy, the California guy. Do we know whatever happened to him? And were we trying to bring up a reasonable doubt with him and Ronnie Britton, and kind of take the heat off of David at the time, or did we truly think that he could be a viable suspect?
We thought he could be a viable suspect. I think since that time, some other people have done far more than we did and came up with some additional suspects that probably actually are the killers. But, if you want to talk to Fred Bannon, maybe you can find some additional information about that.
Okay. Yeah, I remember his name coming up. Okay, let's talk about Juanita White and kind of that bombshell that hit a couple months after the case when she was found murdered. And what I'd read, go ahead.
It's a sad story.
It is. It's horrible.
Juanita was David's mother. She came to me one day just absolutely happy as can be because she had a piece of evidence that was going to clear David and he was going to be out of jail and she could prove it. And I said, well, what have you got? And what she had was a letter from one of the inmates that had testified against David saying that he was willing to come into court now and tell the truth, and that is that he lied about everything on the stand, and so did the other inmate witnesses because they were offered deals where their sentences would be shortened and stuff like that, and he was willing to testify about it. So she was convinced that that letter was going to clear David. And I said, well, why don't you do this? Give me the letter, and I will get it to the U.S. attorney, and I'll make you copies so you have copies of it. She said, okay. She came to my office then, gave that to me. I got that letter to the United States attorney. She left, and knowing Juanita, I'm sure she went around telling people she had something now that was going to clear David. and she didn't have anything to worry about. And she probably came to talk to me on a Friday, and by Monday she was dead as a doornail.
Wow.
Wow.
Because she'd been murdered by somebody who I think had gone into her house in order to try to steal the letter
Mm-hmm.
that she didn't have.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, she didn't have it anymore. And actually, after they had the murder call, the call of the homicide, and then there was another call at the same house that when they came back, the house had been ransacked. Again, somebody looking for that letter that they never found.
That's not because she was dirt poor. She didn't have anything worthwhile. You wouldn't go into that house looking for hidden jewelry or money or
Right.
certificate of deposit. I think the only thing that somebody was looking for was that letter.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Let's see. In your opinion, and I don't know if you can say this, what do you think happened on July 14th, 1982? And do you have a person in mind that you think, or people in mind? But what do you think actually happened that day?
I think probably the kids were out at the lake partying, and they got with the wrong people, and something happened and it all went south, and that David, Gilbert, and Anthony weren't with those kids and didn't have anything to do with the killing.
Wow. But you don't have a favorite person in mind?
I've forgotten all of the names,
Okay.
but I remember that Fred knew the names, but he wasn't even divulging the names of people that he actually thought he was trying to get DNA samples from them in order to establish that they were in fact the killers.
Uh-huh.
He thought he might even be able to get a confession. That's the last I talked to him about that.
There was a Tab Harper, I think.
Right.
And then he was just supposed to be like had a bad guy demeanor, just like David Wayne Spence, and he was at Caney Park that day. So some of the tip lines and town talk, his name came up a couple times. And the last thing that I saw kind of on the blog that people were still like, how come Tab Harper wasn't investigated more? Where is he now? Is he alive? Is he listening to this?
I think Tab Harper's dead as a doornail, isn't he?
I don't know. He might be.
I remember because, again, I've slept since then, but I can't remember.
Okay.
Truman Simon was there when one of the people who we thought might be involved is alleged to have committed suicide.
Okay. That's Benny Carroll, I believe.
Oh.
He's the one that was convicted. Well, unless there's another. Benny Carroll was convicted of, or not convicted. His DNA is the one that actually matched with Juanita White's.
Right.
But they couldn't take it any further than that because he shot himself.
Right.
Okay. All right.
What about the Melendezes? Do you think they were involved?
No, I don't.
No, not at all.
It's interesting because we got a copy of the audio from when Gilbert was taken to the lake to show the police where the bodies were, to demonstrate that he, in fact, knew something about it. He was a party. When afterward, we were told by Gilbert or Gilbert's attorney or somebody for Gilbert as investigator, somebody, that the police had taken him out there and the crime scene tape was still up. So he really didn't have much to do except say, we went this way. And Captain Weinberg would say, are you sure it was this way? And that was the key to him. No, that wasn't. He'd go a different way. But the crime scene tape was still up. You really don't have much trouble picking out a crime scene if it's surrounded by yellow tape, do you?
No.
Right.
Wow.
Lord. So I'm going to bring up Benny Carroll again because he's the one that obviously his DNA matched Juanita. do we think that was just random, or do we think his motive was to cover up? And so if so, do we think he's the one that killed or had something to do to kill the triple murders? Kenneth, Jill, and Raylene.
I don't think anything to do with the triple murders.
No.
I think he went in Juanita's house to get that letter, and maybe she surprised him, so he killed her.
But why would he want the letter, I guess?
Well, he maybe would be trying to get the letter for somebody else. Who do you think would?
Who would want the letter?
I don't know.
I bet he knows.
I don't know. Okay. What do you have?
Okay, if you could start all over on this case, knowing what you know now, what would you do differently?
Oh, gosh.
Loaded question.
Good question. If it was being tried now as opposed to being tried then, I'm sure that I would do something differently. For example, the forensic odontologist. Wouldn't have to worry about that because we spent hours and hours with that.
Uh-huh.
We talked to the best forensic odontologist in the country. Went to California, had a guy from California come and talk to us about what Homer Campbell said. So we spent a lot of hours that we certainly wouldn't spend now. I probably would get David running a good polygraph test.
Okay.
Because I think he passed.
Okay.
But were those admissible in court back then?
No, but
No.
I still use polygraph test all the time in plea bargaining with prosecutors.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Now these odontologists, they just look at teeth marks on, what are they, on your skin, like on the body?
Yeah.
Right?
And so these only had pictures.
Homer Campbell said that the forensic odontologist looks at the marks that are made there, and that human flesh is a great medium for it. Since that time, forensic odontologists say you can never do that. That's totally wrong because flesh is the worst possible medium for recording marks.
What?
And lots of people have been misidentified with that, including one person that Homer Campbell misidentified. There was a plane crash. He claimed that this person was obviously the person that died, and then 2 or 3 years later, the person turned up alive in Florida or something.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember seeing that.
Hi, I'm Hank. You might remember me from a show called King of the Hill. Check out a King of the Hill rewatch podcast. These boys ain't right, but they are funny. Find the podcast anywhere you get your podcasts or at roguemedianetwork.com. I tell you what.
Okay, so you kind of already answered this question. You, as far as David, you believed then and believe now that he was innocent. So a lot of these lawyers that work, like the TRC lawyer, let me think what that stood, Texas Resource Council, I think, that the pro bono group of lawyers that were working on him, on behalf of him as well, they didn't really have an opinion of him being guilty or innocent. They just thought he had an unfair trial, and then that was their whole goal, is to prove that. But
Well, I think he had an unfair trial, but I also think that he was innocent. I don't think he.
Okay.
And I think that's based on what we did then. And afterward, I maintained a friendship with David where he and I would exchange letters, and he sent me some interesting stuff that he had made in prison, and I went to his funeral when they brought the body back here.
Oh, wow. Wow. Okay, so those TRC lawyers that got him a couple of stays from or of the execution. I don't know how you word that. So they would write these writs, I think they called them, write these letters. They'd be granted a stay. So he got to live a little bit longer. And then they were working to debunk that odontology and just a bunch, and the inmates, jail inmates, and their confessions. Do you think that if they had more time, that they could have got the case overturned?
Hard to tell. I don't do any appellate work, but I did talk to a lot of those people, including Raul Schoenemann, who did a tremendous amount of work, worked his butt off at it. And Raul is still practicing in Austin.
Okay.
And he's a fine lawyer. But I think they just did everything they could possibly do.
Okay. Just ran out of time. And it seemed like David kind of gave up towards the end, too. He was like, there's no hope. I'm just going to go be with my mom.
It's hard to feel like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's a plus trivia.
Do you think his kids are still around?
I'm sorry. No, thank you.
Was that Alexa?
I don't have any idea why she started talking.
She listens to the conversations.
No.
She wants to get in on it.
Say yes to continue or no to end the game.
No.
Goodbye.
She wants to be on the podcast.
You?
Okay, Caroline, what's your question? What's your last question?
Okay, my last question is, what are some of your other like major cases in Waco, and what's your most infamous case? I mean, I could probably guess, but I'll let you tell us.
Well, probably the one you ought to mention is that we went to trial. My son and I, went to trial about 3 weeks ago, with a capital murder case. And the jury acquitted our client. They found him guilty.
Oh. Well,
Who
now that's
was
public
it?
knowledge, right? So you could tell us.
I can tell you what.
You can tell us, right, who it is and what the case was?
Yeah, I can, but it'd
Okay.
be more of a challenge if you would look it up.
Oh.
You know, I'm going to look this up.
Okay, capital murder case acquitted.
Capital murder in the 18th District Court, tried in the large courtroom in the annex.
Mm.
Prosecutors were Chrissy Huntinghorse and Vanessa Fuentes. I think that's her last
I'm going to have to look it up.
Okay, so while she's looking that up, how long did the David Wayne Spence case bug you? Like, did you have a lot of sleepless nights? Do you still think about those things when you're driving, like down Herring?
I occasionally think of David, yes.
Okay.
And does it bug me? Yes, it still bugs me. Frequently, if I get started talking about it, I get so angry I have trouble keeping my train of thought.
Oh.
Okay. So, have you had to work with or against Vic Fazell since this case?
I don't think that I've had any opportunities to cross swords with Vic since then.
Okay.
He and I don't get along real well.
I bet. And I've reached out. He still may come on the podcast, but I've reached out to him to kind of get that. I wanted to get both sides. I wanted to hear what you guys thought. I wanted to hear what they thought and what you think about it 40 years later. And you still seem very adamant about your feelings for David and how the trial went. I will say Truman came to my book club when we covered it a couple years ago, and he was just as adamant as you are about that it was a good case, it was a good investigation, that nobody else could have done this. It was David and it was the Melendez brothers, and done. So he felt very strongly about it too.
At least that's.
Go ahead.
I said at least that's what he told you.
Okay. I will say that I've read the book and like went over the case 3 times. One time right after high school. So then that, and it was just the book.
Are we talking about Careless Whispers?
Yeah, sorry, Careless Whispers.
Careless Whispers is an interesting book of fiction.
Of pictures.
Of pictures or fiction?
Fiction.
Fiction.
It was the state's theory of the case, and in the book, according to somebody who told me this, and I don't remember who it was, he generates a lot of stuff that wasn't there, including even a meeting in a room that doesn't exist. So if you read that book or reread the book, bear in mind it's an interesting book of fiction.
Okay. Duly noted. But that kind of backs up what I thought. I read it like right after high school, and I was like, there's no question. He did it, you know, the teeth, the this, the that. And then you have my family who from Waco, my dad's side of my family grew up with them, went to school with them, and they're like, no way, there's no way you can convince me. And so we would be at reunions kind of going back and forth. Read it again about 4 years ago with just the book, but we did it at our book club, and it was a debate. It was about half, nope, that's bad investigation, that was an unfair trial, he did not do it. This time, going through all the other evidence, not just Careless Whispers, but all the other stuff that came up, this is my first time at 40 years old that I've had doubt that David and the Melendez brothers were the actual killers. I said it.
It's interesting because I, of course, spent many hours with David and with our investigator, Leon Cheney, who, bless his heart, is dead now, with Anthony's investigator. And so I know that there was a ton of evidence that could have been brought in front of the jury that never was, that showed that Anthony wasn't even in town that day.
Oh, yeah, Tony. Okay, yeah, because he said he was on a job in Bryan College Station or something.
Right, and his truck wouldn't work, and afterward, just to make sure that nobody second guessed him, Truman bought the truck and then trashed it.
Yes. Yep. I saw that. Okay, was your case Robert Juarez? Wait,
Nope.
The murder of Robert Juarez, so then Anthony Chambers?
Where is the 18th district? Like, where is this? Where are you?
We're in the 19th District Court here in Waco.
What was that 18th? Okay.
And you might find it by going backwards, and that is that his co-defendant, my guy, was alleged to have taken money to do the murder, and the allegation was that he was hired by Tyler Clay.
Keith Spratt.
You got it.
Oh, I did see a little bit of this in the news. Hey, talk about that. Did you work with somebody else on this? Was it just your office?
It was myself and my son.
Okay. So, give us a little bit of that. I have it up and I'm kind of reading along with you.
Okay. It was alleged that Tyler Clay hired Keith Spratt to kill a fella that both he and several other people felt deserved killing. And so the state went to trial on Tyler Clay and convicted him in 3 hours. And that case has since been reversed based on technicalities because of something that Judge Johnson was supposed to have done. But it's still there. Now, my expectation is it's going to go away. But right now it's still pending. And he's represented by three excellent lawyers. the Goldstein Group from San Antonio,
Mm-hmm.
and locally by Robert Stem Jr. are his lawyers. They're fine lawyers. So if anybody's going to be able to get Tyler Clay out of this, it's going to be those guys.
Wow.
But we Spratt and argued that the evidence against Spratt consisted more than anything else of lying jailbird witnesses who testified that they were testifying because they expected to get a deal and get their sentences cut,
Wow.
which goes back to David Spence. doesn't it?
Yeah.
A lot of the evidence against David was the lying jailbirds who came in expecting to get their sentences cut. And one of the other things that was of interest that they would have said was that they were brought up here from TDCJ to testify against David. And while they were here, they were given special privileges like being able to have sex with their wife or girlfriend in the library of the DA's office.
That's not gonna deal.
Word for like that.
Wow. Yeah, I saw, and I remember reading all those accusations. This is a little crazy. Well, this sounds like you got something to celebrate on this case. One more big case. What your most notorious besides David Wayne Spence?
Maybe one that was kind of fun, and that was a case on Robert Byrd, B-Y-R-D. I got the state to agree that they would not seek the death penalty, which is a triumph. And then we went to trial on the case. And Robert Byrd was an interesting fellow because he was probably about 6'5", solid muscle, and had broken out of jail and had they were afraid to house him in the jail because he had a habit. If he didn't like you, he was going to go up and beat the shit out of you.
Okay.
So I think his was the first case that the district attorney's office used the shock belt.
Shock belt?
You know about the shock belt?
No.
The shock belt is a wonderful thing to have because it makes sure that the defendant behaves himself in the courtroom.
Oh.
Underneath the defendant's clothes so the jury can't see it. And they have a deputy who sits there watching him like a hawk. And if the defendant tries to act out, the deputy pushes the button and the defendant does the chicken flop on the floor.
What? What do they do? Just like jump up and try to attack somebody?
If they get
If
mad?
they do,
If they do, you shock them so that they don't.
It's like a shock collar.
It's a hot shot.
That's what you need.
it's not a collar, it's around the waist.
Well.
Wow. And that's still, is that legal?
Absolutely, as long as the jury doesn't see it.
I love these little secrets.
And remember, I have to sit to these people.
He was the white supremacist, Robert Allen Byrd? Okay. Of Keene, Texas. I have family in Keene. Texas Aryan Circle member given life sentence for murder. So he is in jail. That was a long time ago. Wow. So what did he actually do?
What is he accused of?
Uh-huh. Oh, what is he accused of? I'm sorry.
He was accused of slicing this girl's throat because he thought she was a snitch. That's what the accusation is. And the funniest part of that whole trial, funny just from because I have a strange sense of humor, was that the prosecutor was cross-examining him, and he said, and when you slit her throat, she let out a huge moan, didn't she? And instead of him saying, well, I don't know what she did, I wasn't there, he said, nah, she didn't do that.
Oh, God.
What?
He convicted himself.
What the hell?
Convicted himself.
Hilarious.
Mr. Hunt, I'm so excited that you called me back. Very prompt, actually, too. And decided to come on our podcast. What I'm going to do is it won't air for about 2 weeks. So we're going to drop part 1. So what I'm dropping this week is part 1. So it's basically like here's the teenagers, here's they were found, here's kind of like the careless whispers part, like Truman Simons, the investigation, how they came up with David and the Melendez brothers, and then they went to courts and it's done, right? And then I blow them up in part 2 with kind of all the things that happened later, and then how it kind of, the whole case blew up. And then you're going to come, then it's going to be your interview, and I got Walter Skip Reeves to interview next. And so I just want to see how many Waco people change their mind after this.
That would be interesting to know.
Yeah. I guess
Let
I
me
can't
know.
count them, though.
That would be good. I'd like to listen to it too.
Yeah, I will send that to you. Thank you so much for coming on. My last thing, it just popped up in my head. Officer Jan Price, that kind of like raised her eyebrow on Truman Simons. Where do you know if she's around now? Do you know whatever happened with that?
I really like her. I have tremendous amount of respect for her, and I have totally lost track of where she might be.
Okay. Well. Thank you so
she's
much.
listening.
Yeah.
You bet.
Thank
Y'all
you so
have a
much.
good-
You too. Have a great evening, and I'll send this to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks a bunch. Bye.
Bye.
Wow, y'all, that was an earful, a mouthful. I hope we thought of like the questions that you might have wanted to ask. But I bet if you just have a burning question, I bet if you email us at bloodyhappyhour@gmail.com, I bet we can get an answer from
Because we're
Mr. Hunt.
basically best friends.
I'm about to start working for him. Did you not hear me?
Did you hear April trying to get
I
on
was
your
like,
job?
just let me shred the papers. Don't forget to
Stay aware
stay alive.
and always be DTF.
Bye, y'all.
Goodbye.
This has been a Rogue Media podcast.
Frozen, Frozen, heroes. Gonna tell you about Frozen, Frozen, heroes. Gonna tell you about.
Hey, I'm Zach,
And I'm Mike.
and we have a fantastic new podcast to tell you about. Bros, Foes, and Heroes. It's the two of us looking into the world of comics, breaking down some characters that you may have never heard of, and some that are just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, so Zach comes up with a character each time, and I go into it just completely blind. I don't know who this person is or what their abilities are or anything, and basically I guess we kind of go over their origin story and just some of the ridiculous stuff that maybe, especially Golden Age stuff.
Oh, Golden Age stuff is always the best, and we will make sure to highlight all of the shenanigans and just absolute weirdness of everything.
Yeah, that's right. So subscribe today and follow us on Instagram at Bros Foes Heroes.
And if you don't, I know where you live. Not really, but please subscribe.
Frozen, Frozen, heroes. Gonna tell you about Frozen, Frozen, heroes. Gonna tell you about.
Hi, I'm Hank. You might remember me from a show called King of the Hill. Check out a King of the Hill rewatch podcast. These boys ain't right, but they are funny. Find the podcast anywhere you get your podcasts or at roguemedianetwork.com. I tell you what.